From asset confiscation to a war of civilizations, how Europe is transformed into an enemy in Solovyov's Rhetoric. Vladimir Solovyov's program is a concentrated illustration of how Russian propaganda television links EU economic decisions, the war in Ukraine, and the long-term image of an existential standoff between Russia and the West. A single, unbroken narrative combines the confiscation of Russian assets, demographics, NATO history, Donbas, and the future of Europe, not as a set of disparate topics, but as elements of a unified picture of aggression against Russia. 1. Asset confiscation as a declaration of war. The starting point of the story is the issue of frozen and potentially confiscated Russian assets in the EU. This step is interpreted not as a legal or political instrument of pressure, but as an act of direct war. The formula is extremely harsh. Theft is a declaration of war. An important technique is used here, blurring the distinctions between sanctions mechanisms, legal disputes, and military action, replacing legal logic with the logic of force and inevitable retaliation. Thus, European institutions are removed from the realm of international law and placed in the category of hostile entities, whose actions supposedly require a symmetrical response. The spirit of the rooster is constantly beating in the head, and Orban has been very clear about who will bring the European Union to a fatal end. Bypassing Hungary, flouting European laws, in broad daylight, coinciding with meetings with Hungary, they seize Russian assets. This is a declaration of war. Thus, Russian assets and theft are a declaration of war. I have never seen a country withdraw 200 or 300 billion euros without a reaction. This does not happen. In fact, 3 Germans are the main actors here. They are the ones, I think, who will bring the European Union to a fatal end. The Chancellor of Germany, the leader of the largest group in the European Parliament, Weber, the leader of this group, Ursula von der Leyen, who is the president of the Commission, and they think that either they have Russian money or they do not, and either the war will end or not. 2. Personalization of guilt and the division of Europe. Responsibility for the death of the European Union is deliberately personified in Solovyov's speech. The leaders of Germany and the European Commission are named as key figures. This allows simplifying the complex institutional system of the EU to a narrow circle of elites, contrasting the corrupt Brussels bureaucracy with nationally oriented leaders. Against this backdrop, Viktor Orban and Donald Trump are introduced as positive counterexamples, not pro-Russian, but pro-national politicians. This move is important for external audiences. Russia, according to this logic, is not against the West per se, but only against those who betray their own people. 3. Inversion of aggression. Russia as the party responding. The key semantic point of this passage is the reversal of cause and effect relationships. Russia is not portrayed as the initiator of the conflict. On the contrary, it is ascribed the role of a state forced to respond to NATO expansion. The events of 2014 in Ukraine are interpreted solely as an external, sponsored coup. Military actions in Donbas are presented as the defense of a population whose opinions the West ignores. This scheme absolves Russia of responsibility for the escalation and simultaneously delegitimizes Western discourse on Russian aggression, presenting it as a false narrative imposed by the media and elites. 4. Donbas and Russian people as a moral anchor. Particular attention is paid to the thesis that this is not about territories, but about people. Donbas, Crimea, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia are described as spaces inhabited by Russian people, regardless of their citizenship or ethnicity. This is an important device. The conflict is transferred from the legal to the moral and anthropological realm. State borders are declared secondary to civilizational affiliation. Any negotiations over territories are delegitimized from the outset, since they affect their own. For a European viewer, this signals a fundamental divergence of approaches. This is not a matter of compromise, but of incompatible notions of political order.